Give me your sense of the political implications of this pick.
Well, the political implications is that now we are in a period of the reactionary right. You could argue the right has always been reactionary, but we do have a kind of contemporary iteration of the right that is kind of like, to use a slang phrase that's very popular in Miami, off the meat racks, if you will, in terms of the right-wing nature of its posturing. And they're going to throw a hissy fit, and I think that they're going to try to, maybe in policy or in temperament, say, okay, you got yours, and hold this long-term down the line for federal judiciary picks or judicial picks in general. Maybe Biden, if he has a few more picks. Biden has had a in opposition to the way Obama was a snail in picking judges. Biden has been pretty good in filling the seats. In terms,
he's at a pace that's even faster than Trump's. Is my understanding.
Trump was knocking him out the park, as a matter of fact. Right. So Biden is doing pretty good, which should be expected, right? Biden was on the Judicial Committee for like years when he was a senator. So.
And there's also, I think there was a concerted effort. We've interviewed Brian Fallon on this program from Demand Justice, which was brought up as like a boogeyman and was against Durbin sitting as chair, has been applying pressure. And he was a former Obama, staffer who basically said, we blew it. And in terms of,
I hate when they say that stuff. They didn't blow it. They strategically did that to appease the institutions that they were representing, which were the banks and finance capital.
I honestly believe that they were just, they made a political calculation that they did not want to expend their energy on the courts. I mean, we could debate that as to whether, but whether they purposely left, that empty, and they seem wholly unprepared even before they got elected. Maybe that was. But,
well, listen. We don't have to deliberate on this. I don't cut the Obama presidency was the most curated presidential administration we've had in this country probably in the last 50 years. All right. This guy was created in a petri dish to be president. He had been siphoned off since he was at Harvard Law School. He was hanging out with what's the guy's name who was eventually he was with the Secretary of Treasury. I forgot his name.
Rubin.
But he was Rubin, he was connected to Rubin early on. This guy is in 2006. He's going to Rubin's Hamilton Foundation, talking about I have a whole piece I wrote for Black Agenda Report on Barack Obama, Wall Street's perfect Manchurian candidate. This guy was in the pipe long before he became president. As a matter of fact,
his entire cabinet was outlined by a guy named Froman, who was a Citigroup executive and ended up being the top trade guy. I agree with all of that, but they could have also put in bank-friendly federal judges, and they just didn't fill any of the seats. I mean, they could have. If they wanted to put in very banker-friendly judges, they could have done it. They didn't even do that.
I think that you're correct on your face in that regard, but they still had to maintain the charade of with Democrats. They can only play the game so far. I mean, they could have filled with a bunch of Merrick Garlands if they wanted.
That's my point. Is that that's why I think it was just simply a question of competence and perception of the judiciary, because they could have filled all these seats. They presumed, right? They didn't presume that Donald Trump would get in and have all 100 of these empty.
I think that was purely plausible deniability for them. You're talking about a guy who was a constitutional law professor. I'm not buying that they were like, oh, I guess we forgot that the Supreme Court and the federal judiciary is important as a president. After Bush, after all the scandals with the Bush administration right before him, in terms of some of his Supreme Court picks. Listen, I'm not saying that they should have revved it up like Trump, but I mean, these guys understand the way in which, particularly since the rise of Bork and the birth of the Federalist Society, it has been an agenda of the right to stack the courts.
Well, Brian, let's put it this way. Brian Fallon, that's his story. And I think that part of what has been, there has been the reason why we're seeing better picks from Biden which better and more numerous than were under Obama, is a blowback from the Obama administration, and in some instances from people who actually were were staffed there. Maybe they have their public story and their private story are different, but be that as it may. So let me ask you this: what did you think in terms of the political value, strictly political value, in terms of like the midterm elections? Because my sense is it was an abject failure on part of the Democrats.
I'm going to be very transparent with you, Sam. I think that Biden dropped the ball by making this about identity politics at all in the first place. Listen, if Biden knew that he was going to pick a black woman, he should have never announced it. He said nothing about it, kept it quiet who his pick was, and then when the time comes, boom, that's fine. Because he basically set her up to be viewed pejoratively without justification. You've got degenerates like Tucker Carlson saying, well, I want to see her LSAT scores. I'm like, Tucker, this woman has more intellectual qualifications than you to do your job. You prick.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. And it was, I mean, he announced this on the campaign trail, and I think it's just and it clearly didn't work. I mean, if you look at just numbers, I mean, maybe the Biden would have lost even more, but maybe he needed to do that to like assure, black voters like, hey, despite my history of being, sort of racist-y a little bit, I'm not going to do that. But it seems to me that, at least in the context of, why not exceed expectations?
This is a guy who knew at a certain point he was going to have the first black female vice president. Why did he need to play that game?